I've always hated wardrobes. Not the sleek, modern ones with mirrored doors, those don't bother me as much. No, it's the old-fashioned bulky ones with ornate carvings, the kind that feel like they're staring back at you. My mother's house had one of those, a towering beast of dark oak that stood in the guest bedroom like an uninvited guest. It's been there as long as I can remember, hulking and silent, its brass handles gleaming faintly in the low light of the room. I grew up dreading that wardrobe. As a kid, I swore I heard noises coming from inside it, faint rustlings, the occasional muffled thump. My mom always brushed it off. "It's an old house," she'd say. "Houses creak, you're imagining things." But I knew better. It wasn't the house. It was the wardrobe. Now I'm back in that house, staying with my mom while she recovers from hip surgery. The guest bedroom is mine for the foreseeable future, and that damned wardrobe is still there. It looks exactly the same, as if time hasn't touched it. The carvings, twisting vines, snarling faces are as vivid as ever. The wood smells faintly of cedar and something else, something sour that I can't quite place. The first few nights were uneventful. I'd lie in bed, staring at the wardrobe's shadowy outline, trying to convince myself that I was too old for this kind of fear. But then, on the fourth night, I heard it again, a faint, scratching sound coming from inside. I froze, my heart pounding. It wasn't the house settling. It wasn't my imagination. The sound was real, and it was coming from the wardrobe. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was probably just a mouse. But the scratching grew louder, more insistent. It was followed by a low, almost imperceptible groan, as if the wood itself was shifting. "It's just an old wardrobe," I whispered to myself. "Nothing to be scared of." But I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I told my mom about it over breakfast. She laughed, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "That wardrobe has always creeped you out," she said. "But it's just a piece of furniture. Trust me, there's nothing in there." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But that night, the noises started again. This time, they were louder. Scratching, tapping, and was that a whisper? I sat up in bed, clutching the blanket to my chest, my eyes fixed on the wardrobe. The room was dark, but the faint glow of the streetlight outside cast eerie shadows across its surface. For a moment, I thought I saw movement, a flicker of something behind the crack between the doors. "No," I said aloud, trying to steady my voice. "I'm not doing this." I got out of bed, my bare feet cold against the wooden floor, and approached the wardrobe. My hands trembled as I reached for the brass handles. "It's empty," I told myself. "It's empty, and I'm going to prove it." The handles were icy under my fingers. I hesitated, then yanked the doors open. The wardrobe was empty, just as I'd expected. Or rather, it should have been empty. The hanging rod was bare, and the bottom of the wardrobe was clean, save for a thin layer of dust. But the smell hit me, that same sour, cloying smell I'd noticed before, only stronger now. It was almost like rotting fruit, but heavier, more organic. I slammed the door shut and backed away, my heart racing. I told myself it was nothing, just an old piece of furniture exuding decades of trapped smells. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd made a mistake opening it, that I'd disturbed something. The following nights were worse. The noises became more frequent, more deliberate. Scratches turned to bangs, whispers turned to faint, guttural murmurs. I started sleeping with the bedside lamp on, but even that didn't help. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of the room, and the wardrobe, it felt like it was watching me. One night, I woke up to the sound of the wardrobe door creaking open. I bolted upright, my breath catching in my throat. The door was ajar, just a sliver, but enough for me to see the darkness inside. And then I saw a hand. Pale, thin, with elongated fingers that ended in sharp, blackened nails. It reached out slowly, almost tentatively, as if testing the air. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The hand withdrew, and the door creaked shut with agonizing slowness. The room was silent again, but the damage was done. I knew now that I wasn't imagining things. Something was in the wardrobe, and it knew I was there. I considered leaving, packing my bags and checking into a motel until my mom recovered. But I couldn't bring myself to abandon her. So instead, I decided to confront it. I didn't have a plan, just a vague idea that I needed to know what I was dealing with. The next night I stayed awake, clutching a flashlight and a heavy wrench I'd found in the garage. I sat on the edge of the bed, my eyes fixed on the wardrobe. The hours dragged by, and just when I thought nothing was going to happen, the scratching started again. I stood up, my legs trembling, and approached the wardrobe. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice shaky but loud. The scratching stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then a voice, low, raspy, and barely audible. "Let me out." My blood ran cold. I took a step back, my grip tightening on the wrench. Who are you?" No response. Just the faint sound of breathing from inside the wardrobe. I felt a surge of anger, a desperate need to end this once and for all. I yanked the doors open, shining the flashlight inside. At first I saw nothing but the empty interior. Then the shadows shifted. A face emerged from the darkness, pale and grotesque, its eyes black pits that seemed to swallow the light. Its mouth twisted into a grin, revealing jagged, yellowed teeth. "Thank you," it rasped, and before I could react, it lunged at me. I screamed and swung the wrench, but it passed through the figure, as if it were made of smoke. I stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of the bed and landing hard on the floor. The thing loomed over me, its grin widening. "You shouldn't have opened the door," it said. And then it was gone. Just like that. The room was silent, the wardrobe empty. But I knew it wasn't over. Whatever I'd let out was still there, somewhere in the house. I moved out the next day, leaving my mom with a flimsy excuse about work. I told myself I'd come back when she was better, when I could deal with the wardrobe, or burn it if I had to. But deep down, I knew I'd never set foot in that house again. Now, months later, I still hear it. At night, in the quiet moments before sleep, I hear the faint sound of scratching, as if it's found me, as if it's waiting for me to open the door again.